Thank you, Mr. Furman, for being here. I know we've had some back and forth already just regarding the, and we've acknowledged this in this committee several times in terms of the hole we had to dig out of, in terms of this, the weakness in our economy when the President took over. But, you know, it is interesting, and I don't think there's any member up here or anyone in the public that would disagree or hope that we had a similar recovery when we came out of Ronald Reagan's, when he came into office. I mean, he had a higher unemployment, and if we only had that type of resurgence right now in our economy, you know, on infrastructure, I know Representative Delaney in particular has had some ideas around that idea in terms of our cliff coming up in May we need to address. But I also think it's interesting from the economic stimulus perspective that was offered by the President just 5, 6 years ago, that infrastructure was largely ignored in terms of that package. But I do want to focus on something in particular in the report that you put forward, because I disagree with some of the metrics and the policy prescriptions that are contained in here. But I do wholeheartedly agree with the Chapter 7 discussion on the benefits of effective and fair trade agreements. And there's no doubt that we need to establish fair and strong rules that hold other nations accountable for their unfair trade practices. We need to tear down these barriers that block our goods from foreign markets, and the importance of free trade and fair trade to our economy and to a state like Minnesota, as Senator Klobuchar noted, where our unemployment rate is much lower, but we have a lot of exports. It can't be understated. And I know this last month I received a letter from another company, a small, medium-sized company. It's Creganna. They're a global supplier of medical device components to the industry, with a facility that employs about 270 people in Plymouth, Minnesota, assembling these complex medical devices. And it does lead to more jobs, as you've stated, higher wages. And it's correct that 95% of the world's customers are outside the United States, 80% of the world's purchasing powers outside the United States, overseas as well. And these trade opportunities, whether it's the Trans-Pacific Partnership, whether it's the negotiations between the EU and the United States with TTIP, will allow our workers to compete, and the Plymouth facility is going to grow and expand to reach their customers more easily. And I also think they note in this letter that they sent me that Trade Promotion Authority is key to getting the best agreements possible for a more streamlined and efficient trade agreement process. And it's necessary to have these high standards agreements, which is what the administration's main goal is. So let me just ask you this. This leads into my question, Mr. Furman. The President has acknowledged that TPA is a necessary tool to get to really strong high standard agreements for TPP and TTIP. And enacting TPA is going to require bipartisan support. What's the President doing, or what's the administration doing to help secure support from some of the Democratic members of Congress? I know the USTR has been up on the Hill pretty aggressively, but what's the status of the negotiations with Senator Wyden? Kind of where are we at? You know, can you share some information on where we're moving there?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for your, I think it's not mischaracterizing to say, an endorsement of Chapter 7 of our report. And the things that you've observed firsthand and hear from your constituents are very similar to the analysis that we've done of the data, and it shows the large benefits of trade, and that's why the President's pursuing it so actively. Just today, for House Democrats, there were 2 sets of briefings that included Secretary Lew, Ambassador Froman, I think Jeff Zients, and maybe one other, Secretary Perez as well. The President's had a number of one-on-one, small group, large group, every size group conversations with members and others. And our team is working with leadership, with the committee heads, ranking members, and others to help bring together an agreement around Trade Promotion Authority. So you can see a bipartisan vote in committee. It can go to the floor. It can have bipartisan support, and it can be something the President signs into law.
Yeah, can I just ask, because your role is a very important role. You are very well respected, certainly as Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. What role are you playing? Are you having these types of meetings as well? Are you helping convince some of our colleagues in terms of the importance of this agreement to follow through on the chapter and not miss the opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. This is an administration-wide effort that starts with the President, and he expects all of us to be actively working on it. You see that manifested in the report. Certainly I've done meetings, conversations, and a variety of other ways to help push it forward, as have pretty much my colleagues across the board in the Cabinet.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.